The unexpected question. The lecture hall at Westfield University was packed with graduate students, professors, and curious attendees. Kira Lawson sat in the back row, her skin tone modifier making her appear human with warm beige skin instead of her natural violet hue. She had been on Earth for 11 months, documenting human behavior for her anthropological research, and this lecture on the psychology of vulnerability had drawn her attention immediately. Professor Adrian Hunt stood at the podium, his presence commanding despite his casual attire of dark jeans and a gray sweater. He was in his late 30s, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples, sharp green eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and an intensity that suggested a brilliant mind constantly at work. Vulnerability, Adrian was saying, his voice resonant and thoughtful, is the foundation of human connection. We are the only species that deliberately exposes our weaknesses to others, that shares our fears and uncertainties, that builds intimacy through emotional transparency. And yet, paradoxically, many of us spend our entire lives avoiding it. Kira leaned forward, fascinated. This was exactly the kind of human behavior her people found incomprehensible. On her home planet of Thesara, emotional vulnerability had been engineered out of the population 3 centuries ago. Her species was efficient, logical, and completely incapable of the kind of messy emotional entanglement that humans seem to crave. Adrian continued his lecture, citing research studies and psychological theories, his words flowing with practiced eloquence. But Kira noticed something beneath the academic polish, a distance in his eyes, a careful control in his gestures. He was teaching about vulnerability while maintaining perfect emotional armor. When the lecture ended, Adrian opened the floor for questions. Several students asked about his research methodology and theoretical framework. He answered each question with professional courtesy, but without real engagement. Kira found herself raising her hand almost without conscious decision. Adrian's eyes found her in the back row. Yes, the woman in the blue jacket. Kira stood, her heart beating faster than usual, a physiological response her species had retained even if emotional context had been lost. Professor Hunt, you've given us a brilliant analysis of vulnerability and its role in human connection, but I have a different question. When was the last time you let yourself feel something real? The lecture hall went silent. Students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the kind of academic question typically asked at university lectures. Adrian stared at her, his composure faltering for just a moment. His mouth opened, then closed. Behind his glasses, his green eyes showed something Kira had learned to recognize during her time on Earth, recognition of a truth he had been avoiding. "That's not really relevant to the research," he said, finally, his voice carefully controlled. "Isn't it?" Kira remained standing. "You're teaching about emotional vulnerability as a theoretical construct, but theory without practice is just intellectual exercise. If you don't allow yourself to be vulnerable, how can you truly understand the phenomenon you're studying?" The silence deepened. Several students were now looking at Adrian with new curiosity, waiting to see how he would respond to being challenged so directly. Adrian's jaw tightened. "I appreciate the philosophical question, but we're here to discuss research, not my personal life. If there are no other academic questions, we'll wrap up for today." Kira sat down, but she continued watching him as the lecture hall emptied. She saw the way his hands gripped the edges of the podium, the tension in his shoulders, the way he avoided looking in her direction. She had struck a nerve, and her anthropological training told her this was significant data. She was gathering her things when a voice spoke from beside her. "That was quite a question." Kira looked up to find Adrian standing in the aisle, his expression unreadable. Up close, she could see fine lines around his eyes, the result of years spent in intense study or perhaps in careful emotional control. "I apologize if I overstepped," Kira said. "That wasn't my intention." "Wasn't it?" Adrian studied her with those sharp green eyes. "You asked a very pointed question designed to penetrate my professional facade. That seems quite intentional." "You're right. I suppose I wanted to see if you would answer honestly." "And if you had, what would that prove?" Kira tilted her head, considering him. "That you practice what you teach. That vulnerability is more than just a research topic for you." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. A real smile that transformed his entire face. "You are either incredibly insightful or incredibly rude. I haven't decided which." "Can't I be both?" "Apparently." He shifted his weight, looking almost uncertain. "I don't usually do this, but would you like to get coffee? I find myself curious about who you are and why you asked that question." Kira felt something flutter in her chest, an unusual physical sensation she had been experiencing more frequently during her time on Earth. "I'd like that." They walked to a quiet cafe near campus, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the street. Adrian ordered a black coffee. Kira ordered tea she wouldn't drink, but which helped her appear more human. "So," Adrian said, once they were seated by the window, "are you going to tell me who you are and why you came to my lecture specifically to call me out?" "My name is Kira Lawson. I'm a researcher studying human behavior and connection. Your work on vulnerability caught my attention." "What kind of researcher?" "You're not one of my students." "Independent. I'm interested in why humans form emotional bonds the way they do. It's fascinating to me." Adrian wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. "You have a very clinical way of describing human relationships. You make it sound like you're observing from the outside." Kira felt a chill run through her. He was perceptive, dangerously so. "Perhaps I am in some ways. I didn't grow up with the same cultural emphasis on emotional expression. Where I'm from, feelings are considered less important than logic and efficiency." "Sounds lonely." The word hit Kira with unexpected force. Lonely. She had learned the definition, of course, but she was beginning to understand the experience. 11 months on Earth, watching humans laugh and cry and hold each other, and she had remained separate. An observer, never a participant. "It is," she admitted quietly, "though I'm only beginning to understand that." Adrian leaned forward, his green eyes intense. "You asked me, when was the last time I let myself feel something real? That's a fair question, so I'll answer it honestly. I can't remember. I've spent so many years studying emotion from an academic distance that I've forgotten how to actually experience it. I teach about vulnerability, but I'm terrified of it." "Why?" "Because feeling deeply means risking deeply. Loss, rejection, pain. It's easier to stay detached, to analyze rather than experience. Safer." He paused. "But you already knew that, didn't you? That's why you asked the question. You recognized someone else who was hiding." "Yes, I suppose I did." They sat in silence for a moment, two people who had built walls around themselves for different reasons, recognizing kinship in each other's isolation. "Can I ask you something?" Adrian said. "Why does human emotional connection fascinate you so much? What are you really looking for?" Kira hesitated. She couldn't tell him the full truth, not yet, perhaps not ever, but she could offer him something honest. "I'm looking for what I don't have. Understanding something I've never experienced. I watch humans connect, and I feel," she searched for the word, "incomplete. like I'm missing something fundamental. Adrian's expression softened. I understand that feeling more than you know. When they finally left the cafe 2 hours later, the sun had set and the campus lights were flickering on. Adrian walked Kira to her car, their conversation having ranged from philosophy to personal history, though Kira had carefully edited her truth. Would you be interested in collaborating on some research? Adrian asked, as they reached her vehicle. I'm working on a study about emotional intimacy and barriers to connection. Your outside perspective might be valuable. I'd like that, Kira said, meaning it more than she expected. Good. He pulled out his phone. Let me get your number. As Kira entered her contact information, their fingers brushed accidentally. The touch sent an unusual warmth through her skin, and Adrian's eyes widened slightly.
I don't regret it, Kira said through her tears, but I'm allowed to mourn what I've lost. Of course you are. That's part of being human, feeling multiple things at once. I'm not human, though. Not anymore. Not really. I'm something in between. Then we'll figure out what that means together. Earth's scientific community reacted to Kira's public revelation with predictable chaos. Some wanted to study her, others feared her, but Adrian's university offered protection and research opportunities. Kira and Adrian became partners in groundbreaking work studying the neurological basis of emotion across species. Her unique perspective, someone who had developed emotional capacity as an adult, provided insights no human researcher could offer. 6 months after her exile, they stood in their shared apartment, preparing for a press conference about their latest findings. "Are you ready?" Adrian asked, adjusting his tie. Kira smiled, her violet skin glowing with health and happiness. "To tell the world that love is a biological imperative that transcends species? Yes, I think I am." "I meant ready to go public with our relationship." "Oh." Her skin flushed darker purple. "That too." At the press conference, they presented their research on emotional development and cross-species connection. When reporters asked about the nature of their relationship, Adrian took Kira's hand publicly for the first time. "Dr. Lawson and I are partners in every sense of the word. Our relationship has been the foundation of this research." The questions came rapidly after that, but Adrian and Kira answered them together, united. That night, alone in their apartment, they celebrated privately. Adrian pulled Kira close, kissing her deeply. "No regrets?" he murmured against her lips. "None. You?" "Only that I wasted so much time being afraid to feel." He led her to their bedroom, but I'm not afraid anymore. Their lovemaking had evolved over the months. Kira now understood her own responses, what brought her pleasure, how to give it in return. As Adrian moved inside her, she felt the familiar cascade of sensation, physical pleasure intertwined with emotional connection. "I love you," she gasped as they moved together toward climax. "Good," Adrian groaned. "Terror means you're alive, means you're feeling." They came together in synchronized release, bodies and hearts aligned perfectly. Afterward, wrapped in each other, Kira traced patterns on Adrian's chest. "Do you think my people will ever understand why I chose this?" "Maybe not, but that's okay. You didn't make this choice for them. You made it for yourself. I made it for us. That too." Months turned into years. Kira and Adrian continued their research, published groundbreaking papers, and built a life together that defied every biological and cultural boundary. They faced challenges, prejudice, scientific skepticism, the occasional Thessalon contact attempting to change her mind, but they faced them together. On the anniversary of Kira's exile, Adrian proposed, not with a ring, but with a piece of Thessalon crystal he had somehow acquired. "Marry me," he said simply. Not because it's logical or efficient, because I love you and I want to spend my life with you. Yes, Kira said through happy tears. Yes, absolutely yes. Their wedding was small, attended by close friends and curious colleagues. Kira wore her natural violet skin proudly, and Adrian wore gray that matched his eyes. They wrote their own vows. I came to Earth looking for answers, but I found questions instead. Beautiful, complicated questions about what it means to feel, to connect, to love. You taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing we can offer another person. You taught me how to be alive. I spent years hiding from emotion, convinced that feeling deeply meant suffering deeply. Then you asked me one question that changed everything. You showed me that the risk of pain is nothing compared to the gift of connection. You made me human again. They kissed as partners, as equals, as two beings who had found each other across the vastness of space. Years later, when other Thesseron researchers began arriving on Earth, Kira became their guide. She showed them what she had learned, that emotion wasn't evolutionary backsliding, but the key to truly living. Some returned home unchanged, but others, like Kira, chose to stay, chose to feel, chose love over logic. And Earth became a bridge between worlds, proving that connection was the most powerful force in the universe. On quiet evenings, Kira and Adrian would sit together, watching the stars. She would point out Thessera's location, and Adrian would hold her hand, grateful that one question in a lecture hall had brought her into his life. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't asked that question? Kira mused. Every day. And every day I'm grateful you had the courage to challenge me. It wasn't courage, it was curiosity. Same thing sometimes. They sat in comfortable silence, two souls who had found each other against impossible odds. Proof that love transcended biology, that vulnerability was strength, and that sometimes the most important discoveries came not from research, but from opening your heart to the impossible. One question had changed everything, and neither of them would ever regret asking it. The end.
I know it's impossible. I know I shouldn't be telling you this, but you asked me to be vulnerable, to feel something real. This is me trying. Adrian crossed the small distance between them and knelt in front of her chair, taking her violet hands in his. This is insane. Completely, utterly insane. You're from another planet. This violates every law of biology and probability and common sense. I know. And yet, his grip tightened on her hands, I've felt more connected to you in 3 weeks than I have to anyone in years. I thought it was just intellectual compatibility, but it's more than that, isn't it? Yes, Kira whispered. I think it is. They sat like that for a long moment, human and alien, both struggling with feelings neither had expected. Finally, Adrian spoke again. What happens now? Do you have to report this? Are there other aliens here? Is Earth in danger? Kara almost laughed. No, nothing like that. I'm a peaceful researcher, one of hundreds scattered across the galaxy studying different species. Earth isn't in danger from us, but I might be in danger from my own people. What do you mean? My species would consider what's happening to me a contamination. Developing emotional capacity is seen as evolutionary backsliding. If they knew I was changing, they would recall me immediately. Possibly study me. Definitely prevent me from returning to Earth. Adrian's jaw set with determination. Then we don't tell them. Adrian, I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm choosing. He stood, pulling her up with him. Kira, I've spent my entire career studying human connection while avoiding it myself. Then you walked into my lecture and asked one question that shattered every defense I had. Whether you're human or alien doesn't change the fact that you make me feel alive for the first time in years. Kira felt tears,
actual tears forming in her eyes. Her species didn't cry, but apparently she was changing faster than she realized. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I don't know how to do this, how to feel, how to be vulnerable. It's not in my biology." "It wasn't in mine either," Adrian said softly. "Not anymore, but maybe we can figure it out together." He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, but Kira didn't move. When his lips touched hers, she experienced a cascade of sensations that no amount of research had prepared her for. Warmth, electricity, pleasure, connection, all flooding through her nervous system at once. The kiss was gentle and questioning, but it awakened something primal in Kira. She wrapped her arms around Adrian's neck, pulling him closer, and felt his surprise and pleasure in the way he responded. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "Still think this is impossible?" he murmured. "Completely impossible," Kira agreed, "and absolutely real." They sat in his cluttered office, holding each other as evening darkened into night outside the windows. Two beings from different worlds, learning that connection transcended biology, that vulnerability was worth the risk, and that sometimes the most important research happened not in the lab, but in the heart. The following weeks transformed Kira's understanding of existence. Every day with Adrian brought new emotional discoveries. She experienced jealousy when his research assistant, Dr. Lisa Chen, touched his arm during a department meeting. She felt joy when he texted her good morning. She knew desire when they worked late and his hand lingered on the small of her back. Her violet skin would flush darker purple when he looked at her a certain way, and Adrian found it endearing that her alien biology betrayed her feelings so clearly. "You're staring," Kira said one evening in his apartment, where they had retreated for privacy. "I'm studying," corrected Adrian with a smile. "Observing how your skin changes color with different emotions. It's fascinating." "I'm not a specimen." "No, you're the woman I'm falling in love with who happens to be from another planet. There's a difference." Kira's breath caught. "Love? Adrian, we've only known each other 2 months. And how long does it take your species to develop attachment?" "We don't. That's the point." Kira turned to face him fully. "My people don't fall in love. We form logical partnerships for reproduction and resource sharing. What I'm feeling for you shouldn't be possible. Maybe you're more human than you think." "Or maybe," Kira whispered, "I'm becoming something neither human nor Thessaran. Something new." Their second kiss was less tentative than the first. Adrian's hands moved into her hair, and Kira made a small sound of pleasure that encouraged him. They had been carefully maintaining boundaries, but something about tonight felt different, inevitable. "Kira," murmured Adrian against her lips, "tell me to stop if this is too much." "Don't stop," she breathed. "Please, don't stop." They moved to his bedroom, undressing each other with trembling hands. Adrian paused when he saw her fully. The violet expanse of her skin, the subtle differences in her physiology, the absolute beauty of her alien form. "You're incredible," he said with reverence. Their lovemaking was slow and exploratory. Kira experienced physical pleasure her species had mechanized out of reproduction. Every touch ignited new neural pathways, every kiss created connections her biology wasn't designed for. When they finally joined together, moving in synchronized rhythm, Kira felt something fundamental shift inside her. This was what her people had sacrificed for efficiency. This overwhelming connection, this vulnerability, this perfect merging of two beings into something greater than themselves. "I love you," she gasped as pleasure built between them. "I love you too," he groaned, and they fell together into bliss. Afterward, wrapped in his arms, Kira's communicator buzzed with an incoming message from Thessera. Her heart sank as she read it. "What is it?" Adrian asked, feeling her tension. "My homeworld. They want me to report in for my annual review. In person." She looked at him with fearful eyes. "If they examine me, they'll see the changes. They'll know I've been emotionally compromised." "What does that mean?" "Recall. Possibly detention. Definitely separation from Earth permanently." Tears streamed down her violet cheeks. "They'll take me from you." Adrian held her tighter. "Then we'll find a way to hide it, to protect you."
But they both knew some things couldn't be hidden, and some choices would have consequences that would change everything. The transmission from Thessera High Council arrived exactly 1 week later. Kira sat in Adrian's apartment, her violet skin pale with fear, as she read the official summons. "They know," she whispered. "Someone reported anomalies in my biometric data. They've detected emotional development." Adrian read over her shoulder, his jaw clenched. "What are they saying?" "I have 2 options. Return immediately for corrective treatment that will eliminate my emotional capacity, or request permanent asylum on Earth and accept exile from Thessera forever." "That's not a choice. That's an ultimatum." "It's standard protocol. Emotional contamination is considered a biological hazard." Kira's hands shook. "If I go back, they'll erase everything I've learned. Everything I've felt. They'll make me forget you." Adrian pulled her into his arms. "Then don't go back." "Adrian, you don't understand what you're asking. It's asking me to choose between 2 worlds, between everything I was and everything I've become." She pulled back to look at him. "How can I make that decision?" "I won't make it for you," Adrian said firmly. "This has to be your choice, Kira. Not because of me or what we have, because of what you want for yourself." Over the next 3 days, Kira agonized. She contacted her family on Thessera, explained the situation. Their response was logical and devastating. Emotional contamination is unacceptable. Better to return and be restored to proper Thesseran function. "They don't understand," Kira told Adrian through tears. "They can't. They've never felt what I feel." "What do you feel?" "Everything. Joy and fear, and love and pain. For the first time in my existence, I'm actually alive. Not just functioning, but living. You showed me that, Adrian. You and this messy, complicated, beautiful planet taught me what it means to truly exist." "Then you know what you have to do." Kira did know. It terrified her, but she knew. She sent her response to the High Council that evening. "I request permanent asylum on Earth. I accept exile from Thessera." The finality of it hit her immediately. She had just severed all ties with her homeworld, her people, everything she had known before Earth. She was truly alien now, belonging nowhere completely. Adrian held her as she grieved, understanding that choosing him meant losing everything else.